You cannot hear me at all? Oh, now yes. Okay. Thanks. Okay, I think we can get started. Maybe some more people will join on the way. First of all, can you all see my screen correctly? Yes, good. So welcome everyone to this webinar. We will have a half an hour presentation, and then the second half an hour will be dedicated to questions and discussion. So in the presentation, the first part, I will try to introduce a bit, first of all, this webinar is about a standard for bioacoustic data. There's, I think, Dan, you have your microphone on. Yes, thank you. So the webinar is about a proposal of a standard for bioacoustic data. So in the first part of the presentation, I will just give you a bit of context about what is our strategy behind this standard. And in the second part, Sane will explain in detail the standard Camtrap DP, which is the standard we are going to extend to include the bioacoustic data. So let's get started by who are we in the team behind Safe and Sound. So we are a team of 4 researchers and engineers. Peter Desme and Sane Govert work for the Research Institute for Nature and Forest at the Open Science Lab for Biodiversity. So they work mainly with software for analyzing biodiversity data. Peter co-developed the standard Camtrap DP, and Sane is a co-maintainer of the standard, and they are both quite involved in GBIF and Darwin Core. So they are our standard expert in the team. And Benjamin Crétois and myself, we work for the Norwegian Institute for Nature Research. We are the bioacoustician here. So we both collect and analyze data, and we work towards having a better tool to use sound to monitor nature. And the 4 of us, we share this passion for open science and this will to get smoother data pipeline to analyze data. The project at NINA that triggered Safe and Sound is TABMON, the transnational bioacoustic monitoring network. And I think this project show well what kind of challenges we can encounter while working with bioacoustics. So in the first work package, we deployed a network of microphones across 4 countries in Europe. And we have to collaborate with different research institutes and universities. So at this stage, we need many different people with different skills, able to capture all the most essential information around acoustic data.
Remember these songs?
Sorry, Liz, you asked a question? Okay, maybe it was a mistake. Then in the work package 2, we are developing machine learning methods to classify bird sounds. So here we need a format that is machine readable to process the data. And in the last work package, we are going to integrate the acoustic observation together with other data type as citizen science or field observations, for example. So here we need a format that is compatible with broader monitoring schemes. And I think most of you also work somewhere in one of these work packages as well, not for this project, of course, but for your own project. And so for this project, we needed a standard or to agree on a data standard to use. And that's how we started Safe and Sound. At Nina, we also work with camera trap data, and we knew about the standard Camtrap DP. So we got in touch with Peter and Sane, who co-developed and maintained this standard, to see, because the audio and images, there are two data formats that are very comparable. So we thought, would it be possible to use a similar system for bioacoustic data? So then we applied all the four of us to the Borrowing Fund funded by WILDLABS and Arm to explore this question of, can we adapt Camtrap DP to passive acoustic monitoring? Sane will explain in detail how Camtrap DP works. So for now, don't wonder too much what it is. So we had since January this year to work on this question. So we collected as many use cases as possible to understand better what are the needs a bit broadly in the bioacoustic community for a standard. We also investigated the existing standards and databases as TETIS, ecoacoustic in Australia, or Xenocanto or DASA. So we found out that there is no consensus about a data standard for bioacoustics. We had then a couple of workshops during the project, and all along this project, we had many meetings or video calls with other organizations. So here is a list of organizations we've been in contact with. Some of them were already involved and contributed directly to this work, as the University Humboldt in Colombia or the Cornell Lab in US, and others we simply had some discussion about how the standard could be used in their work. So this slide is here just to show you that we've been trying to reach out as many bioacousticians as possible. And we didn't develop this standard completely isolated of the world. That's quite the opposite. During the two workshops, the first one, Sane and Peter visited us in Norway, and we made this list of suggested changes to Camtrap DP. Maybe some of you had a look at this document already. And then I went for 2 weeks at the Cornell Lab to ask the question, basically, how would you use Camtrap DP? So I had many meetings with researchers, software engineers, hardware engineers, to see how they would use the standard, where is the need exactly, and how they could implement it in their own system. Of course, the standard cannot cover absolutely all the needs that we have in the bioacoustic community. So the standard we are proposing here is mainly an exchange format. So in your software, it will be this export or import button when you want to share your dataset with other working group, or if you want to store your data in your server and make sure you captured all the most important information. Can be used also to publish the data. And one of the main advantages is that it's both machine and a human readable format. It can be applied across realm. So if you have deployments on land or underwater, you can use this standard. It is meant to be global, so global at 2 levels. So within the bioacoustic community, there are standards already at project level or national level, as a SOL in France or TETIS in US, but we don't have international consensus to exchange bioacoustic data. So that's where Camtrap DP would fit. The second level, global level, is the compatibility with other data type. For example, if you want to publish your data on GBIF and you want bioacoustic observation to be integrated in broader monitoring schemes, that's where you can also use Camtrap DP or convert easily to a Darwin Core, for example. It's a community-based standard, meaning that it's us, the users of the standard, that is developing it, differently than, for example, the standard ISO, which is an organization maintaining it. And a big point is that the goal of this standard is to be as accessible as possible, so very simple to use and to get started with it. If some of you have tried to use directly Darwin Core or Tethys, it can be a bit overwhelming, all the different terms that exist, and you can be a bit lost about, okay, how can I map my data set in these standards? So that's the goal of Camtrap DP, to have something accessible that cover most use cases. So if you have a very complicated deployment with, for example, an array of hydrophone towed behind a boat and trying to locate the whales, that's probably not Camtrap DP that will capture the best your data set. But if you have a stationary deployment with a recording schedule, then Camtrap DP is for you. I'm going to leave the floor to Sane, that will introduce camera trap data package in detail.
Yes, thank you, Julia. Okay, you can see my screen? Yes. Okay, hi everybody. So my name is Sanne, and I will introduce you to camera trap data package, aka Camtrap DP. I will also give you an idea of the changes that are needed, the next steps that will happen, and how you can actually be involved. Yeah. So Camtrap DP is actually a fairly young data standard. It was released in November 23. There's a paper by Buknicki et al. That describes it. So if you're interested, I recommend you to take a look. There's a website, and on the website you can find all the terms and definitions of the metadata, the data. So at the top corner at the right, you can see there's also an example data set to understand the structure more easily, frequently asked questions, and a link to the GitHub where the data standard actually lives. So as Julia already explained in the scope, it's community developed, and some other advantages. There's a couple of people who are willing to maintain it, and the data standard is also extensible. I will explain to you this later. It's a fair data standard, which means that it follows the principles of findability, accessibility, interoperability, and reusability. So even though Camtrap DP only is less than 2 years old, there's actually already a kind of ecosystem emerging around it, which is very nice. So there's different software and tools that make use of it or are adopting Camtrap DP. It's a couple of R packages, also desktop prototype to explore and visualize it. The Integrated Publishing Toolkit, the IPT, which is an online software to publish your dataset to GBIF, is also adopting Camtrap DP. And then there is a couple of camera trap data management tools that use Camtrap DP as an export format, or are planning to implement it in the foreseeable future. So a big advantage is that GBIF has adopted Camtrap DP. If you're familiar with publishing data to GBIF, so which is the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, you probably have transformed your data before. So most of the people transform their data to Darwin Core because GBIF uses a data format that is based on this. But now, since recently, it's also possible to upload your data just as the Camtrap DP files. So if you were using, for example, Ahuti, you can export in Camtrap DP and then just upload it to GBIF. Now there is still a data transformation, it just happens automatically. So to Darwin Core and also to EML, which is for the metadata. So the first advantage is automatic. You don't need to do the data transformation. The second advantage is that there's still the possibility to download the original, more rich data sets. This is only at the data set level so far. So this is a print screen. If you, in the filter on occurrences, search for protocol, there's now a little bug in it, but you can follow the link at the bottom. Then you can actually filter on all Camtrap DP occurrences. So the DP stands for data package. So the structure of Camtrap DP is it's a frictionless data package. So there are 4 required files, data package.json for the metadata, and the data itself is divided in 3 different files. It's because it's based on a hierarchy of how the data is structured, and deployments, media, and observations. These are all tabular files, and so it's CSV here. This is an image from the paper to explain you a bit more the structure. I will guide you through because this might be a bit overwhelming. So let's first look at the highest level. So you have a project, a study. There's some metadata describing the data set, the project, and also the files. This all goes into the data package.json file. Then you have a deployment. So you have your device, you put it in the field. So you have the coordinates, the start time, so from T1 to T1000 in this case, some details about the camera setup or device setup, which are important to know for any user of the data. So there's a kind of string under deployment. This is a deployment ID. So for each deployment, there is 1 row with all this information. Then in the second table, we have all the information about the media files. So in this example, it's a picture, an image. And so we have information again about the timestamp, so T200, T201, the capture method, the file path, whether it's online available or not. Also, each row has a media ID. And the 2 tables are linked by a deployment ID. For each deployment, it's the possibility to link it to multiple media ID. When you have the media files extracted from your device, you can start annotating. So this information all goes in the observations table. So, a bit too fast. It gives you more information about, for example, whether it's an animal, a vehicle, or a blank image, the scientific name of the species that was recorded, how many, or some more specifics about this. For each media file, there can be several observations. They are linked by media ID, and deployment and observations are also linked by deployment ID. Now in Camtrap DP, there is the possibility to make the distinguish whether you based your observations on the media or an event. So in this case, and you can have all the information together in the same table. In this orange table, you see that for observation 1, it tells you that in the first media file, there are 3 ducks. In the second media file, there are 4 ducks. And in the last one, there's also 4 ducks. But if you look at the event, which is actually the sequence of the pictures, there's 5 ducks in total. An event is actually something that makes biologically sense. So for a camera trap, it's pretty easy because in this case, it was triggered by motion, by activity, and then it always takes a sequence of pictures, and that's the event. So it's something that the researchers decide. I explained to you that Camtrap DP is extensible. Here you see the output of the example data set. So it has 3 required tables: deployments, media, and observations. These are standardized. It has, for example, the IDs and some of the terms you saw before. But there's also the possibility to add additional data resources, in this case, individuals. But for example, it could be calibration. The difference is only that it's not standardized, but you can add it. So we have deployments, media, observations. This all is also used in bioacoustic data. So as Julia explained, we first looked into what is needed to change to Camtrap DP, and if it's are the changes big, then yes, maybe you just need a separate standard where there's already something available, or is it like possible to just expand Camtrap DP so it can be used for both camera trap and bioacoustic data? And we thought, well, it's good enough to combine them. The changes are not too big, and the advantage is also that camera traps and bioacoustics are often, well, not often, or sometimes also combined in the same study setup, and then you have it in the same data format. So I'm not gonna explain to you all the suggested changes because this is lots of information. You also need to be familiar with Camtrap DP to understand what it truly means, but I will give you some examples. So first of all, some names need to change because now everything is camera focused. So for example, camera model would become device model, so it's neutral. Then the second is sometimes there are already terms that are relevant, but maybe not capturing all the setup types of what is also like a use case in bioacoustics. For example, the capture method for camera trapping, it was fine to just choose activity detection, time lapse, or even both. But in bioacoustics, it also happens that there's just like one long recording for the whole deployment. So that's an extension. Another thing is that there's, of course, a need for new terms because they're very specific to bioacoustics, such as sampling frequency, gain, channels. These are often related to the media properties. And then there is also this suggestion to add a new table called assertions, which is can be compared to measurements or facts, because any kind of information that is related to deployment, the media or the observations can also be added. For example, if you want to describe something about the behavior of the species you've seen, or maybe to describe the focus species. The reason that we would do it this way is that we don't want to have the required tables to be huge, because as Julia explained, we don't want to cover each specific use case. We just want to cover most use cases. Assertions table is still a standardized way that instead of for each term you have a column, it would be in a row. So there's also now the possibility with Darwin Core. So we have this process with the bioacoustic community to suggest changes, but there is also another community, the Insect AI community, that also wants to adapt Camtrap DP, but needs some changes. Because for now, Camtrap DP was developed with focus on medium-sized mammals. That's quite different than camera trapping insects. For example, there is this term called bait use. You don't actually bait an insect, you attract it, so that would be more appropriate words. They also suggested to add the table assertions, and there's also the need to document the model specifics. It's not clear what is the best solution to do so. For the Insect AI suggested changes, there is already a branch on GitHub, which you can check out if you're interested. Because at some point, these will merge together, of course. Then the next steps, what will we do? So for now, we were talking with people, or we had this big Word document where people could actually also add comments. We'll move all this information to GitHub, where we will post it in issues. So it's like forum style. So for each suggestion, there will be a separate issue where the reasoning is explained and where people can still answer. Then the second thing is testing. So far, it has been mainly theoretical, but we need to map data sets to Camtrap DP to make sure that everything works, that we forget something, is it logical, and that kind of stuff. Then third, in October, there is the Living Data Conference in Bogota. And together with Humboldt Institute, we'll host a workshop on Camtrap DP for bioacoustic use. And then the last important step is, of course, preparing the bioacoustic version of Camtrap DP. Now, we know there's quite a lot of you very enthusiastic and eager to start using this new version. But we need to be realistic. The release of a new version is dependent on, at one way, how fast do we get to a consensus. We need to be sure about everything. And the second is funding. It's because it's not only adapting the standard, it's also about all the tools and the workflows that are dependent on it. When there's a new version, like we can't have it that, for example, the workflow to publish your data to GBIF is not up to date with this new version. This should match. So that's actually quite some work. So we will try to get funding to do this. Then how can you actually be involved? You can just be updated. You can watch the GitHub repository. It's kind of follow button, but it's called watch. And then you get all the notification of the stuff that's happening there. You can also check out the posts on the WILDLABS discussions. We will post the updates there. And once the summary report is finished, we will also publish it by means of these channels. And that's where everything will be explained, what has been happening. Then second, you can also contribute to the discussion on the GitHub issues. You're very welcome to do so. And you can also test your data. This is actually, I think, the best way to also contribute to the discussion and show your use case. And lastly, it's also very nice to be able to talk to you. So if any of you is also going to Living Data, it would be nice to have a chat, or if you can join us at the workshop that we were hosting. So.
So yeah, finally, if there is a few things you should remember from this webinar, is that first of all, there is a need for a simple data exchange format in the bioacoustic community. And our project showed that Camtrap DP is a good fit for bioacoustic data. The main advantage of Camtrap DP is that it's well supported. You can, it's a maintained software. It's a maintained standard. And there is a bunch of tools available that you can use and will also be updated in the future. And it's also supported by GBIF. And keep in mind that to develop a standard, it's a long-term effort, and we are eager to pursue this work further now. And if you are also interested in this topic or know some group that are working on standardization of bioacoustic, please get in touch with us. We are very open to collaboration. So thank you, everyone, for joining this webinar today, and a big thank you to WILDLABS and Arm, because without the Borrowing Fund, we will not have had that much time to explore this new solution for a standard for bioacoustic data. So now we have some time to answer questions. So either you can raise your hand or talk in the chat, or maybe speak up. We are not that many.
Jamie, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Great.
Thank you for a really nice talk and for developing the standard. I'm from Insect AI, so I think I met Sana earlier this year and Peter a year or two ago. I was wondering about, so one of the other things that we discussed in the context of Camtrap DP for insect camera monitoring was that sometimes it's not clear how to account for the subjectivity of annotation and observation of media, whether that's acoustic recordings or cameras. And we even discussed bringing in other tables that represent putative biological entities. I think we were calling it an annotations table, highlighting the fact that an annotation comes from one individual looking at those media, and also from one particular annotation exercise, which might have a specific scope. One person might be looking for the ducks, other people might be looking for the vegetation in the background and that kind of thing. And we weren't sure if there were some aspects of Camtrap DP that maybe weren't perfect for that, those kinds of data. So I wondered if is that something you've had trouble with in the acoustics world, or not?
Yes, if I can take a first answer to this question. So that's also a question we have in the bioacoustic community. And the standard TETIS, for example, that's what they tried to tackle by putting a lot of fields to describe the effort in the annotation as well that has been done, etc. So, but we don't have, and I know that there are different working groups trying to work on controlled vocabulary to describe different sounds. I'm thinking about a group working on fish sounds actually right now. So it's still a question in the air, and Camtrap DP will not directly answer this right now. So, and I think it will require more work and more discussion. And I think for each taxa, almost we should have some working group to decide on these questions. Peter, if you want to continue.
Yeah, I think there's two aspects. One, if you just want to use it for biological data and you have your consensus observations, not multiple truths, you still want to know what effort went into the assertions. And that is something that could be recorded at the dataset level. And we're looking at Humboldt Core, which is an existing standard by Biodiversity Information Standards, TEDWIC, to see if we can use some of those terms to document how much effort went into the annotations, into the annotations. And then the other thing is the annotations table versus the observation table, where you can have multiple truths. But in some cases, you need both. I think for biological data sets or for biological uses, we definitely should record the effort that went into the annotation. Like I only looked at ducks. And then for AI training, I think we also need the multiple truths. So you kind of can know, okay, but these are all the observations, or there were conflicting information here. Let's see how well my AI model is doing versus these conflicting annotations of all the images. I hope that answers your question.
It does, yeah. I think I think you're right. It revolves around this tension between what is the right standard for publishing biological observations, which is what GBIF is really focused on. As this is what you helped me to learn, Peter. But then I guess there is that tension with what you need for example, and training a machine learning model. So it'd be interesting to see where we go to meet in the middle.
Yes, Peter?
I have a question for you, Julia. Having gone through this process, how do you think you will use Camtrap DP in the Topman project?
Excellent question. Right now, we are actually thinking about it. For sure, when we will publish the dataset, because the goal of Tabmond is at the end to publish all the data and make them accessible or visible at least. So we will use Camtrap DP at this stage, so at the very end of the project, just because it didn't come early enough for us and we already started to work with the data. But I think it shows that if like when you are working within your organization or within your project, it's perfectly fine to work whatever system works for you. It can be good to have in mind standards such as Camtrap DP to make sure along the way you collect the right information at each step, and it just gives you a kind of guideline to structure your work and your data. But it's not something you need to use and follow very closely when you are working. It's mainly at the end product you are delivering to a stakeholders or forest manager or whoever. Thank you for the question, Peter.
I can answer Carolina's question in the chat. She asked, could you elaborate on the purpose of the suggested assertions table? So assertions is the same as measurement or facts in Darwin Core archives. We use the name assertions because that is what is proposed for the follow-up of Darwin Core archive, which is called Darwin Core data packages. There was a webinar by GBIF on that this Monday. And the idea would be that for every deployment, media or observation, you can add different measurements or facts. Let's say you have the temperature that was recorded by the camera for each image. There is currently not a temperature column. We're not going to add a temperature column because you might have something different like grass length. That is information you would be able to record in an assertions table. And you would be able to structure that information so that software can easily read those assertions rather than everybody coming up with their own measurement table, and then that it would not be standardized. So we're taking inspiration from Darwin Core archives and Darwin Core data packages there to better record measurements. And then it also allows us to not have to add every single term as a column in the main tables for people who want to extend it with things for their case studies. It will still be structured, but people are able to add their own terms more easily. Does that answer your question, Carolina? Okay.
Are there more questions?
I'll raise one if nobody else has one. So thank you for the presentation and developing the standard. I'm working with an organization that's working with some acoustic folks in Australia, and we probably won't get to testing the standard for a while, 6 months to a year, I wouldn't imagine, but we're struggling with the question of how fine-grained our DOIs should be, you know, at what granularity we should be assigning DOIs to things. Is there sort of a common way you're seeing this in acoustics generally? Is it just the data package, or is there a finer level of granularity that's usually done?
So for, I mean, I can only talk for the camera traps there. One data set equals one study. So the data set would get the DOI, and the scope of the data set is a study. You, of course, define how big a study is, but Camtrap DP is not designed for multiple studies all at once, but the R package has a function where you can combine data sets, so different studies together. So I see this similar to how you publish datasets to GBIF. I mean, there are different approaches to this, but I think it works quite well to have a study equals a dataset, because then the scope is quite clear, the authors and contributors are quite clear, the methods that are used. So that would be my answer.
Thanks.
I also saw in the chat that Jamie asked if anyone has tried to publish with the standard yet. So I think for now there are about 7 or 8 Camtrap DP studies published on GBIF. So far this is just a recent implementation. So there were some little bugs that needed to be solved, and most of it is fixed now. But there's only one part that does not work yet, or well, at least one thing that we know that doesn't work yet. At this moment, it's only possible to publish event-based observations, but this will be updated quite soon, that you can also publish media-based observations. So the reason that there's a distinction is because media-based is often like lots of occurrences. For camera traps, it's like, for example, 10 images for within a minute, and we don't want to overload with so many occurrences of very similar information. But sometimes there's only the media-based observations. So, but Jimmy, if you want to test it out and you have questions, you're very welcome to ask them directly or on GitHub.
I do find the event versus media level observations thing quite interesting, because you know, you have the example with the ducks, and it makes a lot of sense. But then you think about, what if the ducks came back the other way 1 minute later, and it kind of, yeah, it's really hard. And this is, it's especially we talked about this in Albania, but it's especially acute issue in insect monitoring, because you really do have the same individuals coming by over and over again potentially, and you really can't be sure when you should maybe call it an event in a biologically relevant way. Maybe it's a case of we just change the way we change the scaling depending on the context and the taxon. But yeah, just an interesting one.
Peter?
Yeah, the event versus media level is just a situation we had to deal with in how software deals with annotating. I mean, if you have AI annotating, it doesn't matter if you give it hundreds of images, it can annotate per image. But we also have lots of data where people annotated at multiple images as once and like consider those events, and they don't have media level observations. And then you're kind of stuck with the events that were chosen from the beginning. But the standard needed to, cater to both approaches. I'm curious how it will work with bioacoustics, where your media files are typically have a length, a duration, versus an image file where that is not the case. I mean, with video files, you have it. The standard can work with that because you can indicate your events or like your length, start and end in your observations. But yeah, this event-based observations is it's just a way of how people have annotated images before, or might even want to just share their images too, or their observations too.
Stephen?
Yeah, hi. I apologize because I came late, so this may have already been addressed. I'm curious if you could speak to how the standard connects to other standards, especially with respect to archiving the data. When I had mentioned this webinar, and I've been following your work from afar through my GBIF and OBIS connections, I was surprised to find that, for example, the folks at NCEI in the United States were not very aware of this work, and I'm thinking about mine and Matt Biddle's experience with the eDNA community, where something similar happened, where now we're a little further down the line and trying to pull everything together in one big workflow, where you use this standard for the archive and this standard for GBIF, and And I'm wondering if that can be, so I guess first question is there any connection being made already? And if not, maybe we can shortcut that and start working on it now, is how all the different repositories can work together with this and other standards. Does that make sense?
Stephen, can you clarify what connection exactly?
Sure. So like, for example, let's imagine, and again, I realize I'm speaking with a very like sort of US centric perspective here, but let's imagine that a NOAA ship goes out and records some PAM data. They come back and they would use something like the NCEI passive packer software to then archive it at NCEI. And then they would call, occurrences and then use this standard to publish to GBIF and OBIS. But I'm not sure how aligned, for example, the metadata, the ISO metadata that would be going to NCEI, how aligned that is to what you all have developed here. Does that make sense now?
Yes, I think there's two parts to that question. I think if there is an existing workflow that NOAA, for example, already uses to publish data, I don't think it's necessary to change. I mean, Camtrap DP is filling a niche where there were silos of data, and it was very hard for those silos to talk to each other. And so they offered an export format where it becomes a lot easier where your data is all in the same format, so all the tools can talk to each other, including in how you publish to GBIF. I think if there's already an operational workflow in standardizing your data like NOAA does in a certain format, there will be conversion scripts that will be able to translate that into the standard that other people want to use or that gains the most traction. It's also a bit of a question of like how popular does a standard become? If everybody is talking about, yeah, I want in that data, then there's also a higher incentive to make those translation scripts. So right now, I would definitely not change to Camtrap DP for bioacoustics because that doesn't exist yet. But like it's up to an organization to see like, does this work in our operational pipeline? And then there's also Darwin Core data packages that are coming soon. So for those use cases where Camtrap DP might not be the best fit, that is the niche that Darwin Core data package tries to fit, where it is much closer to how you model your data yourself. That is what Darwin Core data package tries to capture, the richness of that data, while Camtrap DP is a simpler format and is designed to be simple. So yeah, I think for organizations, it's going to be a decision, but it's hard to predict what the future will be. And I think if there's a need to translate, people will either do it in-house or there will be tools coming that can do this for you.
Well, that makes sense. Thank you. I mean, I guess the main sort of jumping off point would be what Matt had shared in the chat, is this Sync Sound data set that Abby and Matt and some other people worked on to publish, and it's a good starting point. And I just want to make sure that the development of that idea works in concert with what you are developing as well.
Yeah, and I remember for images, there is also this marine images standards that I've seen talked about, which is, but it goes also very, very deep in recording lots of things about a single image. Yeah, it's good to be aware of this initiative so we can align, but I feel like software can do quite a lot in translating from one format to another. And then there's also a question from Dorian, including mobile platforms. That is something we currently keep out of scope. I mean, it is, you could do it if you don't have that many locations. You can just create multiple deployments, one for each position that you have, but you can tell that at some point this will become quite cumbersome. And that is currently a limit we're keeping in Camtrap DP. So it is stationary cameras or devices. And then again, I think for these type of data, Darwin Core data package will probably be a good fit to express that information.
And just to add to this answer, for adding mobile platform or other deployment protocols, basically that are a bit more complex. For now, with Camtrap DP, what we want to do is to have a solution that is available as soon as possible and starting with the most common use cases. But then if there is a will from the community to include more use cases, and it becomes too different from what Camtrap DP is able to do. So thinking in the far future, like in several years or something like this, then it's absolutely possible to just split the two standards and make our own bioacoustic standard with all the specification we need. So yeah, just short point here.
But I want to add to that what Julia explained. Of course, there would be a disadvantage that you have a second, yeah, you need other people to maintain it, because maintaining one standard is already quite some work. So this was actually the big advantage to keep it together. So if it's possible, we prefer it that way. But if it's needed, it can be different.
Just I'm a total neophyte, but what does it involve to maintain a standard? What does it mean?
Well, it's mainly like the whole ecosystem around it. So we also maintain Camtrap DP and Camtraptor, which are our packages. And as soon as there is an update, a new version of the standard, all these changes need to happen in the software as well. So also to the workflow, to publishing, to GBIF. So what also happens is, okay, now there's no new release, but there's problems, bugs, whatever, things that are happening because it's still fairly young. There's things like new, yeah, just bugs emerging that we weren't aware of, and these need to be solved. But maybe Peter can explain it better than I can.
So Sanna is explaining the software component of it, and the bugs are in translation, for example, from Camtrap DP to EML or to Darwin Core. If you're just talking about the standard and don't care about the ecosystem and just say, okay, that's somebody else's problem, then it's a question of you come with a suggestion, I need this term in the standards because I have a use case for this. Well, then it's finding a consensus. How many other people have this use case? Are you fine with just using like the deployment comments or the deployment tags for your use case? Or are there enough people who actually want this as a standardized term? And it's not always easy to find this consensus. And it is that extension of the standard or updating the definitions or maybe making the definitions clearer so people understand it. That is what is part of the maintenance of the standard. Because the easiest would, of course, be to come up with a standard, whether it is the result of a consensus of a community or just an idea of a smaller group, release it and say, hey, that's it, people can start using it, but it's not open for updates or changes. So that is what we don't want to do. We want it to be open for changes, but we also don't want the changes to come so fast that the whole software ecosystems cannot follow up and you have data sets and all kinds of different versions. So we need to find a balance between catering to use cases of people that are common enough and not have a new version of the standard every year. Matthew asks question, do you plan on providing guidance about intermediary data that should be shared? I don't think as part of the standard, but maybe Julia, do you have experience with intermediary data and how to share this? Because I do not, other than maybe dropping it on Zenodo.
To be honest, I don't know what is intermediary data. Can you explain?
Yeah, I can jump in. I don't know if my camera is working or not. It might be.
Yes, it is.
It might not be. Yeah, so I'm just a little bit going back to what Steve was talking about. And within NOAA, that they've come up with some guidance as to how to manage passive acoustic monitoring data. part of it is coming up with the detection level data, so essentially getting the occurrences, doing the Darwin core part. But the other parts is distilling the acoustic data down into these, they call it hybrid millidecades. And this is what they decided, that if you process acoustic data down to this level, it can be used for additional products and metrics across different sites, across different time periods. So it's a good kind of simplified version. Instead of sharing the raw audio files, which can be large, can be difficult to share, if you produce the hybrid millidecades, you can put them out in netcdf format, and they can be used across sites for national scale, global scale products, and for more integration into things. And so while I completely understand that the Darwin core standard and this DP is all focused on mainly around occurrences, I'm curious if there's thoughts about other intermediary data products and things like such as sound propagation modeling information and things like that that could be added in or could be recommended in addition to this standard. I don't know if that makes any sense at all. I should preface that I'm not an expert in passive acoustic monitoring. I do the data management for a project, but I don't know anything about the technology, and some of these terms are a little new to me, but I'm just curious about like the other parts that can be distilled from the acoustic data that we receive.
Yeah, for now, this specific use case haven't come up. That's the first time that someone talked to us about this data type and the importance of including it or not in the data standard. So I wanted to read a bit more about it and what it is and how it looks like. So I cannot give an answer right now. I don't know if Peter or Sane has any idea about it. Or Stephen.
Yeah, what I was
can
going to
help.
say is...
I was just going to say, I can help start that conversation if you want to talk with the NCEI folks, to just have everybody in the same room talking the same language, because you all know way more than I do.
And what my comment was going to be is that, again, I see many analogs between how the eDNA community is thinking about data management over the entire production and publishing workflow. And so I think what Matt is talking about is some technical details which would be very convenient and useful for some people. Many people might not need them. And so it's maybe more of that sort of assertion level linkage that Peter was talking about before with the Darwin core data package, of just saying, you know, these are other relevant information. The community as a whole tries to identify those as part of the publishing model, but it doesn't have to be a bespoke thing for this specific standard necessarily.
Yeah, as you say, Matthew, maybe starting the conversation, that would be great. So we can have another talk later, maybe to understand better what we are talking about here. And thank you, Stephen, for your answer. If someone else has a thought about this, please speak now.
Yeah, I think Matthew was talking about intermediary representation. It's any signal processing between the input raw audio, between the input and the output of your workflow. So it can be anything. It is the spectra Matthew talked about. I think it's something basically derived from the fast Fourier transform with different resolutions, but it can be anything. I think the point is do we inform the methods we use to get the final metrics, the final observation results?
Okay, thank you, Dorian. Then I understand a bit better the question, because for the calibration, for example, of the acoustic data, this has been discussed, and we were wondering how do we capture this information at what stage? Because at the end of the sensor, the microphone itself, you can have you have the first raw data, but it can be amplified, and you have different gain and etc. Along the chain of the collection of the data. So for now, at least for this the people at the end, they are just using the file that is produced at the end of this recording chain. Sorry for my very simple words here. So, but nobody at least was using this intermediate data. But I understand that maybe in some cases you would like to share this intermediate data if someone wants to try and test protocols. So yeah, we will need to look into it in more detail to find out if it's possible or not.
I think it's 5:01 that we can close the webinar. So thank you everybody for listening and to be involved, and we hope to talk to you in the future online or live. And also the recording will be shared. I think you will get the link because you registered. So thank you. Bye.
Julius, and thank you very much.